What happened when an undercover CEO decided to step into the shoes of his employees to uncover the truth behind the dysfunction in his own company? In this video, we take you through the journey of Samuel, a CEO who went undercover to see firsthand the challenges his logistics company was facing. What he uncovered was shocking: employee exploitation, poor management, and customer service issues that were threatening to tear the business apart. But Samuel's bold decision sparked a transformation, leading to positive change for both the employees and the company. Stay tuned to see how one CEO's undercover journey turned everything around. Griffin Logistics, a thriving distribution company, has been the backbone of the region's supply chain for over 4 decades. Founded by Samuel Griffin, the company grew from a modest operation to an industry leader known for its strong values of integrity, respect, and employee loyalty. At 68, Samuel is facing the challenges of aging, both physically and mentally, and realizes it's time to step down from his role as CEO. His body, once strong and resilient, now aches with the passing years, and his energy fades by the afternoon. However, it's not just his physical decline that weighs heavily on his mind, it's the future of the company he built. The idea of retirement is bittersweet. He's proud of what he has created, but concerned about the direction the company will take under new leadership. Samuel has carefully selected his successor, Ethan Price, a young, ambitious executive with an MBA from a prestigious university who has led with efficiency and a focus on profits. On paper, Ethan seems like the ideal candidate to lead Griffin Logistics into its next phase. Yet Samuel can't shake the feeling that Ethan's leadership style, which prioritizes performance metrics and corporate efficiency, might clash with the culture of trust and human connection that Samuel has worked so hard to cultivate. As Samuel watches his employees bid him farewell during his retirement party, he can't help but wonder, will Ethan carry on the legacy of respect for their workers, or will he turn them into just numbers on a spreadsheet? The mixed emotions surrounding the company's transition set the stage for Samuel's next move: an undercover investigation to understand if the values of Griffin Logistics would survive Ethan's leadership. After much contemplation, Samuel made a bold decision. He would not fully retire just yet. The doubts that gnawed at him about Ethan's ability to uphold the core values of Griffin Logistics pushed him to take action. He couldn't rely solely on secondhand reports or vague assurances from board members. Samuel knew that to protect the legacy of his company, he needed to see firsthand how the culture was evolving under Ethan's leadership. His decision to go undercover was driven by a deep sense of responsibility, not just to the business, but to the employees who had been loyal to him for decades. Samuel understood that business success wasn't just about profits. It was about building relationships, trust, and a sense of community. He needed to know whether Ethan was truly committed to those principles, or if he was simply focused on maximizing efficiency at the expense of the people who had made Griffin Logistics what it was. To carry out his plan, Samuel adopted the persona of a delivery driver. He would blend in with the frontline workers, keeping his identity a secret from everyone, including Ethan and the rest of the management team. He arranged for a temporary departure from his high-powered CEO role, telling everyone that he was retreating to a cabin in the mountains with his wife to enjoy some quiet time. In reality, Samuel moved into a modest apartment nearby, taking on a new name, Henry Green. His transformation was complete when he started working for a third-party courier service contracted by Griffin Logistics. As an anonymous delivery driver, Samuel would have the perfect opportunity to observe the day-to-day operations, witnessing how employees interacted with one another and how the management system operated from the ground up. He knew that this undercover mission wouldn't be easy. It meant facing the same grueling work conditions as his employees, but it was the only way he could get the truth. His heart heavy with both excitement and anxiety, Samuel prepared himself for what lay ahead. It was a risk, but he was determined to understand what kind of company Griffin Logistics was becoming under Ethan's leadership, and whether he had made the right decision in selecting him as his successor. Samuel knew that in order to truly observe the inner workings of his company, he needed to shed his identity as the revered CEO of Griffin Logistics and become just another face in the crowd. He spent hours planning his transformation into an ordinary delivery driver, making sure to change his appearance and demeanor so thoroughly that no one, not even the employees he had worked alongside for years, would recognize him. The first step was abandoning the tailored suits and polished image he had worn for decades. He swapped them for a worn uniform from the third-party courier service, complete with a faded cap and a pair of old sneakers. His signature neatly groomed hair was replaced with a scruffy beard, and he traded his usual glasses for thick-rimmed non-prescription ones that gave him a more aged, inconspicuous look. The once meticulously crafted persona of Samuel was gone, replaced by Henry Green, a grizzled, older delivery man with nothing to offer but his labor. Samuel's transformation wasn't just physical, it was mental and emotional as well. As Henry Green, he had to embrace a completely different mindset. No longer the CEO who made the decisions, he was now a worker on the front lines, subject to the same pressures, expectations, and frustrations as the employees he had once led. He understood the importance of staying in character, maintaining the guise of an ordinary employee without drawing any suspicion. This meant avoiding anything that might give him away. He kept his conversations minimal, his movements natural, and his attention to detail sharp. By blending in as much as possible, Samuel knew he would gain access to the true essence of the company's culture under Ethan's leadership. However, the emotional toll was not lost on him. As the days passed, Samuel felt the weight of his disguise, the strain of operating under a false identity, and the discomfort of being disconnected from the company he had spent his life building. Yet, he was resolute. He had a mission, and nothing would stop him from uncovering the truth. As Samuel, now known as Henry Green, began his undercover mission, the harsh reality of employee exploitation and mistreatment quickly became apparent. The first signs were subtle but troubling. Employees working longer hours than they were contracted for, with no breaks and no overtime pay. As he observed the delivery warehouse operations, it was clear that the staff were being pushed to their limits. Workers, many of whom had been with the company for years, were visibly exhausted, their movements mechanical and strained. It was a stark contrast to the company Samuel had built, where he had always prioritized employee well-being and work-life balance. One particularly disturbing moment came when he overheard a conversation between two delivery drivers, Jeff and Claire, who were both well into their shifts but had not been given a break all day. Claire, her face pale from exhaustion, confided in Jeff about her fears of being reprimanded if she requested time off. "I've been here since 7 this morning," she said, rubbing her tired eyes. "If I ask for a break, I'll get docked hours, and we're already short-staffed. What choice do I have?" Jeff nodded, his face tired but resigned. "Same here. If we don't keep up with the deliveries, we won't get enough hours next week." The exchange made Samuel's stomach turn. These workers, who had once been loyal and valued members of the team, were now being treated like expendable resources, pushed past their physical limits in a relentless cycle of overwork and underappreciation. The real tipping point came when Samuel witnessed the interaction between the new warehouse supervisor, Martin, and a delivery driver named Tom. Tom had missed a target for the number of deliveries in a day, an unrealistic and burdensome expectation that had been placed on the staff without proper support or training. When Tom approached Martin to explain his difficulty in meeting the target, he was met with scorn. "You think we're running a charity here?" Martin sneered. "Either hit your numbers or we'll find someone who can. We don't have time for slackers." Tom, clearly defeated, nodded and walked away without a word. The tone of the interaction was harsh, dehumanizing, and a far cry from the supportive environment Samuel had once fostered. It became increasingly clear to Samuel that under Ethan's leadership, the focus had shifted from valuing employees as integral parts of the company to viewing them as mere cogs in a machine. The lack of empathy, the toxic culture, and the disregard for employees' well-being had eroded the trust and loyalty that once defined Griffin Logistics. It was painful for Samuel to witness, but it was also the final confirmation that something needed to change. Immediately, the company Samuel had built was being systematically dismantled from the inside out. As Samuel continued his undercover work, it became evident that the dysfunction within Griffin Logistics was deeply rooted in the management's approach. The shift in leadership under Ethan had been stark. What once had been a company known for its employee-first culture was now driven by cold efficiency and a relentless pursuit of profit. Ethan, the new CEO, had distanced himself from the values that Samuel had instilled in the company. Instead of focusing on the well-being of employees, Ethan's primary concern was maximizing profits, often at the expense of the workers' mental and physical health. One of the most glaring examples of this was the way Ethan's management team treated employee concerns. During one of Samuel's shifts, he witnessed a conversation between Martin, the warehouse supervisor, and an exhausted employee, Sarah, who had requested time off due to her severe back pain. Martin's response was blunt and unsympathetic. "You're not the only one with problems," he snapped. "Everyone's working hard, so you'll have to tough it out. If you want to take time off, fine, but don't expect your job to be here when you get back." The dismissive tone of Martin's response mirrored the overall atmosphere created by Ethan's leadership, one of neglect and indifference to the welfare of employees. Even more concerning was the management style that Ethan had cultivated. Samuel observed how Ethan's focus on metrics and bottom-line results had led to a culture where employees were treated like numbers. There was little room for human empathy, and the staff members had begun to feel like they were constantly being measured against impossible standards. As Samuel walked through the warehouse, he overheard Martin talking to a group of workers. "We're tracking your performance closely," he said with a smirk. "Hit your numbers, or you won't be here next week. Simple as that." The harshness of this mentality had spread throughout the company, and it was clear that Ethan had created an environment where fear and pressure dominated, rather than support and understanding. In the boardroom, Ethan's decisions were made based on cold calculations, not the human factor. He saw employees as interchangeable parts, easily replaced if they didn't meet his unrealistic expectations. Samuel realized that Ethan's approach had poisoned the company culture, and it wasn't just the employees who were suffering. It was the long-term viability of the company itself. The lack of empathy, the constant fear of job insecurity, and the erosion of trust between staff and management had created a toxic environment that would be hard to undo. This was a direct result of Ethan's leadership, and it was clear that fixing the company would require much more than simply addressing operational inefficiencies. It would require a complete overhaul of how Griffin Logistics was led. As Samuel continued to observe the day-to-day operations at Griffin Logistics, it quickly became apparent that the dysfunction within the company extended beyond just the treatment of employees. It was also deeply affecting customer service. The once reliable company that had prided itself on offering top-tier logistics and delivery services was now struggling with delayed shipments, poor communication, and increasingly dissatisfied clients. Samuel had heard complaints from longtime customers who were frustrated by the inconsistency in service, but it wasn't until he experienced the chaos firsthand that he understood the true scale of the problem. One afternoon, as Samuel worked alongside the delivery team, he witnessed the growing frustration of a loyal client, Mr. Thompson, who had been waiting for a shipment of specialized equipment. When Mr. Thompson finally arrived to pick up the order, it wasn't ready. The warehouse was disorganized, with stacks of packages in the wrong sections and several missing items from inventory. Samuel could hear the frustration in Mr. Thompson's voice as he demanded to know why his shipment hadn't been prepared. "This is the third time in the past month that you've missed the delivery window," Mr. Thompson shouted. "You promised me the equipment would be here on time, but this is becoming ridiculous." The blame, however, didn't seem to fall on the delivery team. Instead, Samuel overheard the warehouse supervisor, Martin, casually brushing off the incident. "It's not a big deal," he muttered to another worker. "The customer will forget about it once the shipment arrives." Samuel's heart sank. This lack of accountability, combined with an overall disregard for the customer experience, was a direct result of the toxic culture that Ethan had created. The employees were burned out, overstretched, and apathetic to the needs of the customers, which only perpetuated the cycle of poor service. As Samuel moved through the warehouse, he saw more signs of disorganization: misplaced packages, untracked deliveries, and employees who simply didn't seem to care anymore. When he asked a worker about a missing package, the employee shrugged and said, "You should check with dispatch, they're the ones who handle that." Dispatch, however, was equally uninvolved, with workers there too overwhelmed to prioritize customer requests. It became evident that the focus on internal performance metrics and cost-cutting had taken precedence over customer satisfaction. In the past, Griffin Logistics had built a reputation for being a reliable, customer-oriented company. But under Ethan's leadership, that reputation was quickly crumbling. Samuel realized that unless the company refocused its efforts on meeting the needs of its customers rather than just chasing profits, their business would continue to spiral downward. The customer service issues weren't just a minor inconvenience. They were a direct reflection of the company's core values being undermined. And without immediate action, Griffin Logistics risked losing the trust of its client base entirely. After weeks of undercover work, Samuel knew the time had come to confront Ethan and reveal the truth about what had been happening under his leadership. The mounting evidence of employee exploitation, mistreatment, and widespread dysfunction within Griffin Logistics was undeniable. As Samuel walked through the warehouse on his final day as Henry, the delivery man, he could feel the tension building in the air. The employees, though exhausted, had started to notice the subtle changes in him. The quiet support he offered, the questions he asked, and the concern he had shown for their well-being. They were beginning to trust him, and Samuel felt a responsibility to make sure their voices were heard. His final straw came when he witnessed another blatant example of Ethan's mismanagement. He had overheard Ethan discussing cost-cutting measures with his executives, casually mentioning how they had slashed employee benefits and reduced staffing to increase profits. Ethan's disregard for both employee welfare and customer satisfaction had reached its breaking point. Samuel could no longer stay silent. He needed to take action, not just for the sake of the employees who had been suffering, but also for the future of the company he had once built with care. As Samuel prepared to reveal his true identity, he couldn't help but feel a mix of apprehension and determination. He entered Ethan's office under the guise of delivering a final package. Ethan was on the phone, barking orders to someone in the supply chain, but Samuel wasn't intimidated. He approached the desk and calmly set the package down. Ethan, still engrossed in his conversation, barely glanced at him. "Just leave it there, Henry," he said dismissively. But Samuel wasn't going to let this moment pass without making an impact. He stood still for a moment, gathering his thoughts, and then spoke up. "I've been here for weeks, observing everything that's been happening," he said, his voice steady but firm. "I've seen the poor treatment of employees, the disregard for customers, and the way you've manipulated this company for your own gain." Ethan froze, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. "What are you talking about?" he asked, clearly caught off guard. "You've been working here for weeks, haven't you?" Samuel continued, his voice growing more resolute. "I am Samuel King, the CEO of Griffin Logistics, and I've watched you destroy everything this company was built on." Ethan's face was drained of color. The shock and panic in his eyes were unmistakable. For the first time, the bravado he carried as CEO seemed to slip away. Samuel wasn't finished, though. "You've taken advantage of your employees, manipulated the numbers to suit your bottom line, and undermined everything we stood for, and now it ends." Ethan stammered, trying to defend his actions, but Samuel didn't back down. "You've lost the trust of your team, your customers, and now you'll lose your job." With that, Samuel knew the confrontation had reached its peak. He had revealed the truth, and Ethan could no longer hide behind the mask of corporate deception. This was the beginning of a long-awaited reckoning. Following his revelation to Ethan, Samuel knew the time for action had arrived. He couldn't simply expose the dysfunction and leave things to unravel on their own. He had to act quickly to restore Griffin Logistics to its former glory. His first step was to gather the leadership team and present the full extent of what he had uncovered. Ethan was immediately removed from his position, and the rest of the executive team who had been complicit in his practices was also dismissed. Samuel made it clear to the remaining staff that the company was going to change, and that the principles that had originally made Griffin Logistics great, integrity, respect, and a focus on people, were going to be restored. Samuel wasted no time in implementing immediate changes. He personally ensured that employees received back pay for the overtime and benefits they had been denied. A full audit of the company's financials was launched to uncover any further discrepancies. He immediately reversed the staff cuts, ensuring every department was adequately staffed, and he reinstated the robust benefits package that had been slashed under Ethan's leadership. For Samuel, these actions weren't just about correcting financial wrongs. They were about proving to his employees that they mattered. In the warehouse, the impact was immediate. With the staffing issues addressed, employees felt a renewed sense of hope. The atmosphere shifted from one of fear and exhaustion to one of camaraderie and pride. Workers who had once been isolated by the company's top-down approach now had a voice. Samuel made it clear that he expected transparency and open communication from all levels of the organization. He set up weekly town hall meetings where employees could directly ask him questions or voice concerns without fear of reprisal. This simple but powerful change began to rebuild the fractured trust between leadership and the workforce. On the customer side, Samuel knew that restoring Griffin Logistics' reputation would take time, but he started by addressing the most glaring issues: poor service and late deliveries. He personally contacted several long-standing clients to apologize for the service failures they had experienced under Ethan's leadership and reassured them that things were going to improve. With a focus on operational efficiency, Samuel immediately implemented better tracking systems to ensure timely deliveries and began retraining employees on customer service standards. The changes weren't easy, but they were necessary. Samuel's hands-on leadership style and commitment to restoring Griffin Logistics' core values began to rebuild the company's foundation. The immediate actions he took served as the first step in the long road to recovery, a road that would ultimately lead to a stronger, more sustainable company. After taking immediate action to address the company's systemic issues, Samuel shifted his focus to the employees, recognizing that their well-being and morale were crucial to the company's long-term recovery. He knew that the company's culture needed more than just policy changes. It needed a genuine commitment to valuing its workforce. Samuel began by reinstating employee benefits that had been stripped away under Ethan's leadership, including health insurance, paid leave, and a retirement plan. He also worked to ensure that pay was competitive and fair, adjusting wages to reflect the hard work employees had put in during the company's difficult times. One of Samuel's most important decisions was to implement a comprehensive training and development program. This wasn't just about teaching employees how to do their jobs better, it was about showing them that the company was invested in their growth. Samuel introduced mentorship programs where more experienced staff members could guide newer employees, helping them navigate the challenges of their roles. This created a sense of community and encouraged teamwork, which had been sorely lacking under Ethan's rule. Samuel also made himself accessible to employees at all levels. He held regular one-on-one meetings with workers in every department, making sure they felt heard and valued. He wanted to understand their needs, concerns, and aspirations. The feedback he received allowed him to make informed decisions about the company's operations and culture, ensuring that changes were meaningful and lasting. The positive impact was almost immediate. Employees began to feel a sense of ownership in the company again. They were no longer just cogs in a machine. They were integral parts of a team working toward a common goal. By prioritizing their well-being and professional growth, Samuel fostered a work environment where people felt respected, supported, and motivated to give their best. This shift in company culture would prove to be one of the key factors in Griffin Logistics' successful recovery. The long-term impact of Samuel's leadership and the changes he implemented at Griffin Logistics was profound and lasting. Within months, the company's financial stability began to improve, and customer satisfaction scores saw a sharp rise. Employees who had once felt marginalized and overworked were now energized and committed, having seen firsthand that the company valued their contributions. The toxic atmosphere created under Ethan's leadership was replaced by a culture of respect, transparency, and collaboration. Samuel's efforts not only restored the company's reputation, but also solidified its position as an industry leader in ethical practices and employee satisfaction. The board of directors, once skeptical of Samuel's unorthodox methods, began to see the tangible results of his decisions. They were impressed by the company's regained profitability and the renewed loyalty of both customers and employees. Samuel had turned Griffin Logistics into a business that not only focused on profits, but also prioritized people, employees, customers, and the communities they served. Samuel's approach to leadership was now viewed as a blueprint for success, and his story became a powerful example of how integrity and empathy could drive a company to thrive in a competitive market. As for the future, Samuel remained committed to ensuring the company stayed true to its values. He implemented regular feedback systems to monitor employee satisfaction and company culture, ensuring that any issues were addressed promptly. With the foundation firmly set, Griffin Logistics continued to grow, and Samuel's leadership remained a guiding force. The company now stood as a testament to the power of compassionate leadership, and its success became a model for other businesses looking to build a sustainable and ethical future. The lesson learned from the story of Samuel's undercover journey at Griffin Logistics is the immense value of integrity, empathy, and transparency in leadership. Samuel's decision to go undercover revealed deep-rooted issues that could have undermined the company's long-term success. By understanding the struggles of both employees and customers firsthand, he was able to identify the systemic dysfunction that had been ignored for too long. The story shows that leadership isn't just about driving profits or maintaining control. It's about creating a work environment where employees feel valued and customers feel heard. Samuel's commitment to treating employees with respect and holding management accountable led to immediate improvements in morale and service. His actions prove that when businesses focus on ethical practices and prioritize people over short-term gains, they can achieve sustainable success. The transformation at Griffin Logistics demonstrates that leadership should be rooted in empathy and understanding, and that positive change starts with a willingness to listen, learn, and make difficult decisions for the greater good. Ultimately, the story highlights that true leadership is about making long-term, values-driven choices that benefit both the people within the organization and the customers they serve.